The cargo ship Morningstar shook violently as it dropped out of hyperspace. Li Wujin gripped his pilot seat and watched the navigation screen flash red warnings. Something was very wrong. "Computer, run full system check," Wujin said into his headset. The computer's voice crackled back. "Navigation system failure. Life support at 60%. Hull breach detected in Cargo Bay 7. Wujin looked out the front window and saw a planet below. It was brown and red with swirling clouds. He had never seen this world before. According to his emergency navigation, this was Kepler 442c. His stomach dropped when he saw the classification code. Deathworld Class 7. Everyone in the galaxy knew about Deathworlds. They were planets where nothing could live for long. The air was poison. The weather was deadly. Even the rocks could kill you. No alien race had ever built a city on a Class 7 world. Most couldn't even land safely. The ship's engines coughed and died. Emergency power kicked in, but Wujin knew it wouldn't last long. He was falling toward the planet, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "Emergency beacon activated," the computer announced. "Signal sent to Galactic Emergency Services." Wujin laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Good luck getting here before I'm dead," he muttered. The ship hit the atmosphere and began to burn. The heat shields held, but barely. Wujin strapped himself in tight and prepared for impact. Through the burning air outside, he could see the ground coming up fast. It was covered in sharp rocks and deep canyons. The ship slammed into the ground with a sound like thunder. Wujin's head hit something hard and everything went black. Far away in space, Commander Veltar of the Quellian Defense Fleet received the emergency signal. He was tall and blue with 4 arms and eyes like a cat. His ship floated near a trade station where he had been buying supplies. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we have a distress call from Sector 779. Veltar looked at the data on his screen. "A human cargo vessel? Where did it crash?" "Kepler 442c, sir." The bridge went quiet. Every alien on the ship knew that name. Kepler 442c was where ships went to die. The Galactic Council had tried to build research stations there 3 times. All 3 attempts failed within days. "How long since the crash?" Veltar asked. 17 minutes, sir." Veltar's whiskers twitched. In 17 minutes on Kepler 442c, the human was probably already dead. The planet's atmosphere would eat through a ship's hull in hours. The temperature swings would freeze or cook anything alive. The local creatures were worse than nightmares. "Sir, should we mount a rescue mission?" his second officer asked. Veltar thought about it. Rescue missions to Deathworlds were expensive and dangerous. Usually they only recovered bodies, but galactic law required them to try. "Prepare a rescue probe," he ordered. "We'll send it to check for survivors. Don't risk any crew." "Yes, sir." The probe would take 2 days to reach Kepler 442c. Veltar didn't expect to find anything alive when it got there. On the planet's surface, Wujin woke up with his head pounding. His mouth tasted like blood. He was still in his pilot seat, but the front window was cracked and letting in outside air. The air burned his throat when he breathed. It smelled like rotten eggs and metal. He could hear the ship's hull making cracking sounds as something ate through it. Wujin unbuckled his safety straps and stood up. His left arm hurt, but it wasn't broken. He looked around the cockpit and saw emergency lights flashing. Most of his systems were dead or dying. "Computer status report," he said. "Life support failing. Hull integrity at 30% and dropping. External temperature -78 degrees Celsius. Atmospheric composition toxic to human life." Wujin shivered. -78 degrees was cold enough to kill him in minutes without protection. But he could already feel the ship's heaters failing. He made his way to the emergency supply locker. Inside, he found a basic survival kit, some food packets, a water recycler, and a small heating unit. There was also an emergency shelter, but it was designed for normal planets, not Deathworlds. The ship shook as something heavy walked past outside. Through a crack in the hull, Wujin saw a shadow moving. It was big and had too many legs. He held his breath and stayed very still until it went away. His hands shook as he checked his supplies. The food would last maybe 2 weeks if he was careful. The water recycler needed power, and the ship's power wouldn't last more than a day. The heating unit was small and weak. "This is impossible," he whispered to himself. But giving up wasn't in Wujin's nature. His grandfather had been a soldier who survived 3 years in the mountains during wartime with almost nothing. His father had been a mechanic who could fix anything with spare parts and creativity. They both taught him that humans could survive anywhere if they were smart and didn't panic. Wu Jin looked around the broken ship and started making mental notes. The hull was made of titanium steel alloy. The wiring was copper-based. The insulation was ceramic foam. The life support systems had filters and pumps. Even broken, all of these things could be useful. Outside, the sun was setting and the temperature was dropping fast. He could see his breath forming clouds in the cockpit. Soon, the hull would be too cold to touch without gloves. He grabbed his supplies and started looking for a better place to set up shelter. The cargo bay was bigger than the cockpit, and some of the walls were still intact. There was also a pile of metal shipping containers that had broken open in the crash. As he worked, Wu Jin thought about the aliens who would eventually come looking for him. They would expect to find a frozen corpse or a pile of bones. They thought humans were weak because they didn't have natural armor or claws or the ability to breathe poison. But humans had something else. They had brains that could solve problems and hands that could build things. They had the stubbornness to keep trying even when everything looked hopeless. "Let's see what I can do with this junk," Wu Jin said to the empty ship. The real test was about to begin. The first night on Kepler 442c almost killed Li Wu Jin. The temperature dropped to -90 degrees. Ice formed on the inside of his makeshift shelter. His emergency heater ran out of power after 3 hours, but Wu Jin didn't freeze to death. Instead, he did something that would have confused any alien observer. He started a fire. Using pieces of broken plastic from shipping containers, some metal shavings, and friction from 2 pieces of titanium hull, he created sparks. It took him 40 minutes of trying, but eventually a small flame caught. He fed it carefully with more plastic and some fabric from torn cargo padding. The smoke was toxic, but Wu Jin had torn apart an air filter from the ship's life support system. He held it over his nose and mouth like a mask. It wasn't perfect, but it kept him from choking. By morning, he was still alive. His fingers were numb and his lips were blue. But he was breathing. 3 star systems away, Ambassador Kira of the Zenthari Empire sat in her luxury ship and watched the sensor readings from Kepler 442c. The Zenthari were known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology. Their environmental suits could protect them in the vacuum of space or the heart of a volcano. "The human crash site is showing unusual thermal signatures," her science officer reported. Kira looked at the data with all 4 of her golden eyes. "Explain." "There are heat sources that don't match the ship's emergency systems. The patterns suggest a combustion." "Combustion?" Kira's voice rose in surprise. "You mean fire?" "Yes, Ambassador. Primitive fire." Kira was quiet for a long moment. Fire was something only the most backward civilizations used. It was dangerous, unpredictable, and created toxic smoke. Modern species used clean energy fields or molecular heaters. "Are you certain the human is still alive?" "The thermal patterns suggest active movement around multiple heat sources. He appears to be building something." On Kepler 442c, Wu Jin was indeed building. The ship's hull was slowly dissolving in the planet's corrosive atmosphere, but that gave him an idea. He carefully collected the dissolved metal residue and mixed it with some chemical coolant from the ship's systems. The mixture created a paste that hardened when it dried. Wu Jin used this paste to seal cracks in his shelter walls. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. The wind stopped cutting through the gaps and his shelter held more heat. Next, he tackled the water problem. The ship's water recycler had broken in the crash. Without it, Wu Jin would die of thirst in days. But he noticed something during the night. When the temperature dropped, moisture from his breath and the humid air outside condensed on the cold metal walls. Wu Jin took apart the ship's plumbing and created a condensation collection system. He angled pieces of metal tubing so water droplets would roll down into containers. It was slow, but by the second day he had collected almost 2 liters of clean water. Dr. Naya of the Vorlak Research Institute received the Zenthari sensor data with great interest. The Vorlak were scientists who studied how different species adapted to extreme environments. They had never seen anything like what the human was doing. "He's not using any energy fields or atmospheric processors," Dr. Naya said to her research team. "He's manipulating the environment itself." "How is that possible?" asked her assistant. "I don't know. Our models say he should have died 18 hours ago. Instead, he's creating solutions we never considered." Dr. Naya began taking detailed notes. This human was doing something that challenged everything they thought they knew about survival on Deathworlds. On the third day, Wu Jin faced a new problem. The planet's atmosphere was eating through his metal tools. Every piece of ship equipment was slowly dissolving. Soon he would have nothing left to work with. But Wu Jin had grown up poor in the factory districts of New Seoul. His father had taught him that everything could be fixed or repurposed. Nothing was ever truly waste. He gathered the corroded metal pieces and sorted them by how damaged they were. The least damaged pieces became tools. The medium damaged pieces became raw materials. The most damaged pieces went into his chemical paste mixture. When his cutting tools became too dull, Wu Jin made new ones. He used rocks from outside to hammer pieces of hull metal into knife shapes. It was slow work and his hands got sore, but it worked. The aliens watching from space were baffled. "He's making tools with rocks," reported Captain Reth of the Hegemony fleet to his crew. "Actual rocks. That's impossible, sir. Toolmaking requires precision molecular fabricators. Tell that to the human. He just made a functioning cutting blade by hitting metal with a stone." The Hegemony were proud of their engineering skills. Their ships were works of art, built with the finest technology in the galaxy. But they had to use advanced facilities and energy-intensive processes to make even simple tools. Wu Jin was doing it with his bare hands. By the end of the first week, Wu Jin had established a routine. He woke up before dawn and rebuilt his fire. He collected condensed water from his improvised system. He ate a small portion of his emergency rations. Then he worked on improving his shelter and tools. He had learned to predict the weather patterns. When the atmospheric pressure dropped, a storm was coming. When the wind changed direction, the temperature would swing from freezing to boiling in a matter of hours. Instead of just enduring these changes, Wu Jin started using them. During hot periods, he left containers outside to collect acid rain, which he carefully neutralized with ship chemicals to make more drinking water. During cold periods, he moved his operations inside and worked on detailed projects like toolmaking. The watching aliens couldn't understand his approach. "Why doesn't he build better insulation?" wondered engineer Zilvan of the Constructor Guild. "Why doesn't he create an atmospheric barrier?" asked Commander Veltar. They didn't understand that Wu Jin couldn't build those things. He didn't have the power sources or advanced materials, but he didn't need them. He was working with what he had, not wishing for what he didn't have. On the 8th day, Wu Jin made his biggest breakthrough yet. While examining the ship's broken air recycling system, he discovered that one of the filters was still partially functional. It couldn't clean the air completely, but it could remove some of the worst toxins. He built a hand-powered ventilation system using a metal fan blade from the ship's cooling system. By turning a crank made from a bent piece of conduit, he could pull outside air through the filter and into his shelter. It was exhausting work, but now he could breathe without holding a filter to his face all day. The alien observers fell silent as they watched the thermal signatures from his shelter. The human wasn't just surviving anymore, he was getting stronger. 2 weeks had passed since the crash, and Li Wu Jin was no longer the same man who had fallen from the sky. His hands were rough and scarred from working with metal and stone. His body had grown lean but strong. Most importantly, his mind had adapted to think like a survivor. The alien observers had given up trying to predict his death. Instead, they found themselves taking bets on what impossible thing he would do next. "The human has been active for 14 standard days," reported Dr. Naya to the Vorlak Science Council. "This exceeds all previous survival records on Class 7 worlds by a factor of 7. What is he doing differently?" asked the council leader. "Everything," Dr. Naya replied. "He approaches problems from angles we never considered. When his technology fails, he builds new technology from scratch." On Kepler 442c, Wu Jin was about to face his greatest challenge yet. He had noticed tracks in the rocky ground around his shelter. They were large with claw marks that cut deep into stone. Whatever made them was hunting in his area. The first attack came at sunset on his 15th day. Wu Jin was collecting metal scraps when he heard a sound like breaking glass. He turned to see a creature that made his blood freeze. It stood 3 meters tall and looked like it was made of living crystal. Its body reflected the dying sunlight in rainbow patterns, but its eyes glowed with a hungry red light. Sharp crystal spikes covered its back and arms. When it moved, it made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. The locals called them shard stalkers, though Wu Jin didn't know that yet. He just knew it wanted to kill him. The creature charged with surprising speed. Wu Jin dove behind a pile of cargo containers as crystal claws raked the air where his head had been. The claws cut through metal like it was paper, but Wu Jin had been preparing for this moment without knowing it. Over the past 2 weeks, he had scattered emergency supplies around his camp. He rolled toward one of these caches and grabbed a modified tool he had made from ship parts. It was crude but effective. He had taken the ship's emergency flare gun and modified it to shoot pieces of sharp metal instead of flares. The metal pieces were coated with chemicals that would react violently when they hit something hard. Wu Jin fired 3 shots at the shard stalker. The first 2 missed, but the third hit the creature in the chest. There was a bright flash and a sound like thunder. The creature stumbled backward, pieces of crystal falling from its body. But it wasn't dead. If anything, it looked angrier. In the Zenthari observation ship, Ambassador Kira watched the scene with fascination. "The human is fighting back," she said to her crew. "How is this possible?" "Unknown, Ambassador. The shard stalker should have killed him instantly. Those creatures have destroyed entire research teams. But he heard it. Look at the damage readings." The crew looked at their screens in amazement. The human had actually wounded one of the most dangerous predators on Kepler 442c using homemade weapons. Back on the planet, Wu Jin was learning fast. The creature was hurt but not defeated. He noticed that when his metal projectile hit, the creature had made a different sound. Not just the normal crystal chime, but something higher and more painful. He remembered something from his engineering training. Crystal formations could be shattered by specific sound frequencies. If he could find the right frequency, he might be able to hurt the creature more effectively. Wu Jin retreated to his shelter while the shard stalker paced outside, looking for a way in. He worked frantically with pieces of the ship's communication equipment. By connecting the speakers to a signal generator and power source, he created a device that could produce high-pitched sounds. He had no way to test it safely, so he had to guess at the right frequency. When the creature broke through his outer wall, Wu Jin activated the device. The sound was horrible, like nails on a chalkboard amplified 100 times, but it worked. The shard stalker stopped moving and began to shake. Cracks appeared along its crystal body. The creature let out a scream that sounded like shattering glass and fled into the darkness. Wu Jin collapsed against his wall, shaking from exhaustion and fear. But he was alive and he had learned something valuable. The planet's predators weren't invincible. They had weaknesses that could be exploited. Captain Reth of the Hegemony Fleet stood on his bridge in stunned silence. "Report," he finally said. "The human defeated a shard stalker using acoustic weapons." "Sirs, acoustic weapons?" "Sound, sir." He used sound to drive it away. Captain Reth had fought in 3 galactic wars. He had seen planets burned by energy weapons and fleets destroyed by antimatter bombs, but he had never seen anyone defeat a shard stalker with noise. "This shouldn't be possible," he muttered. "Sir, should we continue observing?" "Yes. I want to know what else this human can do." Over the following days, Wu Jin developed his understanding of the local ecosystem. He discovered that shard stalkers were attracted to electrical signatures and heat sources, but they avoided certain areas where the ground contained high levels of quartz. Instead of just hiding from the predators, Wu Jin began to study them. He tracked their movement patterns and feeding habits. He learned that they hunted mostly at night and rested during the hottest part of the day. Most importantly, he discovered that they communicated with each other using subsonic frequencies. By building a listening device from ship components, he could detect when they were approaching long before he could see them. This knowledge allowed him to plan his activities around their behavior. He did noisy work when they were sleeping and stayed hidden when they were active. He even learned to mimic some of their warning calls to keep them away from his immediate area. The watching aliens were amazed by his systematic approach. "He's not just surviving the ecosystem," observed Scholar Bach of the Academic Consortium. "He's learning to be part of it." "This is unprecedented," agreed Dr. Naya. "Most species try to dominate or avoid hostile environments. The human is adapting to work within the natural systems." By the end of his 3rd week on Kepler 442c, Wu Jin had transformed from a crash victim into something new. He moved through the dangerous landscape with confidence. His shelter was no longer just a hiding place, but a functional base of operations, and the aliens watching from above were beginning to realize something that would change their understanding of humanity forever. This human wasn't just refusing to die. He was learning to live. 1 month after the crash, Li Wujin stood outside his shelter and breathed the toxic air of Kepler 442c without coughing. His body had slowly adapted to the harsh atmosphere, and his homemade filtering systems had improved his air quality enough to make it bearable. The crash site now looked completely different. What had been a scattered wreck was now an organized base. Wujin had built workshops, storage areas, and even a crude laboratory where he tested materials and chemicals. But his greatest achievement was something no alien observer expected. He was growing food. The emergency rations from his ship would have lasted 2 weeks at normal portions. By eating carefully and supplementing with processed local materials, Wujin had stretched them to a month. Now he was trying something even more ambitious. He had found seeds in his emergency kit meant for starting crops on colony worlds. These seeds were designed to be tough, but not tough enough for a death world. So Wujin changed the conditions instead of expecting the seeds to change. He built a greenhouse using clear plastic from cargo containers and metal frames from shipping crates. Inside, he created soil by mixing ship compost with local dirt that he had treated with chemicals to remove the worst toxins. He even built a watering system using condensed moisture and filtered rainwater. The first plants died within days. The second batch lasted a week. But Wujin kept trying, adjusting the soil chemistry and protection methods each time. On his 28th day, tiny green shoots appeared in his makeshift garden. Commander Veltar received reports of this development with disbelief. "The human is growing plants?" he asked his science officer. "Yes, sir. Thermal imaging shows organized agricultural activity within his shelter complex." Complex. He has expanded his operations significantly. The original crash site now covers an area of approximately 200 square meters. Veltar looked at the data in amazement. In 1 month, this human had built what amounted to a small research station on a planet where the Galactic Council couldn't maintain a simple monitoring post. On Kepler 442c, Wujin faced his next major challenge. The planet's weather patterns were becoming more violent as the season changed. Massive storm systems were building in the atmosphere, and his instruments showed electrical activity that would make the storms extremely dangerous. Instead of just preparing to survive the storms, Wujin saw an opportunity. He had been running low on power for weeks. His improvised batteries could only hold small amounts of energy, and his hand-cranked generators were exhausting to operate. But storms meant lightning, and lightning meant massive amounts of electrical energy. Wujin spent 3 days building a lightning collection system. He used tall pieces of ship hull as conductors, connected them with copper wiring to a series of makeshift capacitors built from ship components. The system was dangerous and crude, but if it worked, it would solve his power problems for months. Park Min-soo, a human engineer working on a research station 3 systems away, would have been proud to see his theories about adaptive engineering proven correct. Humans had always been able to find ways to use natural forces to their advantage. The storm hit on Wujin's 32nd day. It was unlike anything he had experienced. The wind reached speeds that could tear apart buildings. The rain was so acidic it dissolved exposed metal in minutes, and the lightning was constant, turning the sky into a continuous light show. Wujin huddled in his shelter and watched his lightning collection system through a small protected window. For the first hour, nothing happened except wind and rain. Then the lightning started hitting his conductors. The first strike overloaded his system and burned out half his capacitors. But Wujin had built backups and safety systems. As the storm continued, his equipment began successfully capturing and storing electrical energy. By morning, when the storm passed, Wujin had collected enough power to run his equipment for weeks. His batteries were fully charged, his workshop tools were operational, and he even had enough energy left over for new projects. The alien observers watched this development with something approaching awe. "He harvested the storm," whispered engineer Zilvan to his team aboard the Constructor Guild vessel. "He actually harvested it. Sir, our own ships can barely survive storms like that with full shielding." "I know, but this human didn't just survive it. He used it." The Constructor Guild prided themselves on being the greatest engineers in the galaxy. Their cities could reshape planets and their machines could move stars. But they had never thought to catch lightning with simple metal rods and store it in homemade batteries. Wujin's success with the storm marked a turning point. He was no longer just adapting to Kepler 442c. He was beginning to master it. Over the following days, he used his new power supply to expand his operations dramatically. He built better tools, improved his air filtration systems, and even constructed a communications array that might eventually let him contact passing ships. His garden expanded as well. The first successful plants had produced seeds which Wu Jin carefully collected and planted in improved soil. Each generation of plants grew better than the last as they adapted to the local conditions with his help. Most surprisingly, Wu Jin began exploring beyond his immediate area. Using his improved equipment and knowledge of predator behavior, he made careful expeditions into the surrounding terrain. What he found amazed him. The planet wasn't just a barren death world. It was rich in rare minerals, had unique geological formations, and even supported primitive life forms that had never been cataloged. During one expedition, Wu Jin discovered something that would shock the galactic scientific community. In a protected valley about 5 kilometers from his base, he found evidence of intelligent life. They were small creatures, about half human size, with thick fur and large eyes adapted for the planet's harsh light conditions. They had built simple shelters and seemed to use basic tools. Most importantly, they were curious about Wu Jin rather than afraid. The first contact happened on his 38th day. Wu Jin was collecting mineral samples when 3 of the creatures approached him. They made soft, chittering sounds and gestured toward his equipment with obvious intelligence. Wu Jin slowly removed some of his simpler tools and demonstrated how they worked. The creatures watched with interest and began showing him local materials and techniques he hadn't discovered yet. They had learned to process certain plants into materials that could resist the planet's corrosive atmosphere. They knew which areas were safe during storms and which minerals could be used for different purposes. Most amazingly, they seemed to understand that Wu Jin was from somewhere else and was trying to survive in their world. Instead of seeing him as a threat, they began helping him. The implications of this discovery sent shockwaves through the alien observation fleet. First contact, Ambassador Kira reported to her superiors. The human has achieved first contact with an unknown intelligent species. On a death world? Yes, and they're cooperating with him. How is this possible? Our previous expeditions found no signs of intelligent life. Maybe, Kira said quietly. Our previous expeditions weren't looking in the right way. By the end of his 5th week on Kepler 442c, Wu Jin had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. He had not only survived on a Class 7 death world, but he had begun to thrive there. His base was expanding, his technology was improving, and he had established peaceful relations with the native population. The watching aliens no longer saw him as a victim awaiting rescue. They saw him as something new and potentially dangerous, a human who could turn the galaxy's most hostile worlds into homes. After 6 weeks of watching Wu Jin defy every law of survival they knew, the Galactic Council finally authorized an official rescue mission. Commander Veltar was chosen to lead it, not because they expected to find anyone alive, but because they needed to understand what was happening on Kepler 442c. This mission has 3 objectives, Veltar told his crew as their ship approached the death world. First, recover the human if he's somehow still alive. Second, investigate his survival methods. Third, determine if Kepler 442c represents a security threat to galactic shipping. His crew consisted of the best rescue specialists from 5 different species. They had equipment that could protect them in the vacuum of space or the core of a volcano. They carried medical supplies that could heal almost any injury, and food that could sustain them for months. They were prepared for everything except what they actually found. The landing was difficult. Kepler 442c fought them every meter of the way down. Acid storms battered their shields. Electrical storms interfered with their navigation. The ground itself seemed to reject their presence. Landing site confirmed, reported the navigation officer. We're 2 kilometers from the original crash coordinates. Sensors show the wreckage? Veltar asked. That's the strange part, sir. We're detecting multiple structures, power sources, and organized activity. It doesn't match our records of the crash site. Veltar felt a chill run through his forearms. Show me. The main screen displayed a detailed view of Wu Jin's base. What had once been a scattered crash site was now a complex of connected buildings, workshops, and cultivation areas. Power lines ran between structures. Gardens flourished under protective covers. Storage areas held organized supplies and equipment. By the void, whispered the tactical officer. It looks like a research station. Or a colony, added the science specialist. Veltar stared at the images. In 42 days, one human had built what looked like a permanent settlement on a planet where the Council's best teams couldn't survive for a week. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface." "From the human?" "Yes, sir. Audio and visual. He's asking if we need assistance with our landing." The bridge fell silent. They had come to rescue a probably dead crash victim. Instead, the victim was offering to help them. "Put him through," Veltar ordered. The screen flickered and showed Wu Jin standing outside a well-constructed shelter. He looked healthy, alert, and completely at ease in the deadly environment. Behind him, several of the small native creatures moved around freely, apparently helping with various tasks. "Hello?" Wu Jin said in accented but clear galactic standard. "I saw your ship coming down. Your engines sound like they're having trouble with the atmospheric interference. Do you need help with repairs?" Veltar opened and closed his mouth several times before managing to speak. We came to rescue you," Wu Jin smiled. "That's very kind. Would you like to come inside? The weather's going to turn bad in about an hour, and your ship doesn't look like it's built for acid storms." 20 minutes later, Veltar and 3 of his officers sat inside Wu Jin's main shelter, sipping something that tasted remarkably like coffee. The building was warm, well-lit, and more comfortable than many space stations Veltar had visited. "How?" was all Veltar could manage to ask. "How what?" Wu Jin replied, genuinely puzzled by the question. "How are you alive? How did you build all this? How are you drinking coffee on a Deathworld?" Wu Jin laughed. "It's not actually coffee. It's made from local plants that Nuru's people showed me." He gestured toward one of the small native creatures who chittered something that might have been a greeting. "Nuru's people?" the science officer asked. "The local inhabitants. They're quite intelligent and very helpful once you learn to communicate with them. They've been living here for thousands of years." The rescue team exchanged glances. Their surveys had never detected intelligent life on Kepler 442c. "Perhaps our sensors were calibrated wrong," Veltar admitted. "Or maybe you were looking in the wrong places," Wu Jin suggested. "Nuru's people live underground mostly, in natural cave systems that protect them from the worst weather. They only come out when conditions are safe." Over the next few hours, Wu Jin gave his visitors a tour of his settlement. He showed them his workshops where he manufactured tools and equipment from salvaged materials. He demonstrated his power systems, which now included not just lightning collectors but also geothermal taps and even primitive solar collectors. His gardens were producing food that supplemented his diet and provided materials for various chemical processes. His water collection and purification systems produced more clean water than he could use. His communications array was sophisticated enough to contact ships within several light years. Most impressively, he had mapped and explored over 50 square kilometers of the surrounding area, cataloging resources, weather patterns, and wildlife behavior with scientific precision. "This is impossible," the rescue team's engineer muttered as Wu Jin explained his lightning collection system. "You can't build technology like this with primitive tools." "Why not?" Wu Jin asked. "The principles are the same whether you use a molecular fabricator or a hammer and anvil. You just have to understand what you're trying to accomplish and work with what you have." That evening, the weather turned violent as Wu Jin had predicted. The rescue ship, despite its advanced shielding, was battered by acid rain and electrical storms. Several systems failed, and the crew had to shut down non-essential equipment to prevent permanent damage. Meanwhile, Wu Jin's settlement rode out the storm easily. His buildings flexed with the wind but didn't break. His power systems actually gained energy from the lightning. His water collectors gathered additional supplies from the rain. "Your ship will need repairs before you can take off safely," Wu Jin told Veltar as they watched the storm through a protected window. "We have repair equipment," Veltar replied, though he didn't sound confident. "I'm sure you do. But some of your damage is from atmospheric corrosion. Your equipment isn't designed to work in this environment. Mine is." The next morning proved Wu Jin right. The rescue team's sophisticated repair tools failed within minutes of exposure to the planet's atmosphere. Their protective suits kept the crew alive but made detailed work nearly impossible. Wu Jin's tools, built from scrap and designed specifically for local conditions, worked perfectly. "Let me help," Wu Jin offered. "I've gotten pretty good at fixing things around here." It took 3 days, but working together, they managed to repair the rescue ship. Wu Jin's intimate knowledge of how materials behaved in the local environment, combined with the rescue team's advanced understanding of spacecraft systems, proved to be a powerful combination. You could come with us, Veltar offered as they prepared to depart, back to civilized space. Wu Jin looked around his settlement where Nuru's people were tending his gardens and operating some of his simpler machines. This is civilized space now, he said. Besides, I have work to do here. Work? I'm writing a complete guide to survival and colonization techniques for Class 7 worlds. I figure other people might find it useful someday. Veltar stared at him. You want other people to come here? Why not? It's actually a pretty nice place once you know how to work with it instead of against it. As the rescue ship lifted off, carrying news that would revolutionize galactic understanding of Deathworld colonization, Wu Jin stood outside his shelter and waved goodbye. Then he got back to work. He had a world to build. 3 months after Li Wu Jin crashed on Kepler 442c, his story had spread across the galaxy. The impossible human who had turned a Deathworld into a home had become famous in ways he never imagined. Ships arrived weekly now, carrying scientists, engineers, and curious observers from dozens of species. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about hostile environment colonization. Dr. Song Ji Hae was among the first official researchers to arrive. As a xenopsychologist specializing in interspecies cooperation, she had come to study how Wu Jin had achieved peaceful contact with the native population. The relationship is remarkable, she reported to her colleagues back on Earth. The humans and the Nuru have developed a true partnership. They share knowledge, resources, and even cultural practices. The Nuru had taught Wu Jin which local plants could be processed into materials resistant to the planet's corrosive atmosphere. In return, he had shown them metalworking techniques that allowed them to create more durable tools. Together, they had mapped the planet's extensive cave systems, discovering geothermal vents that could provide clean energy and mineral deposits that could support industrial development. The Nuru's knowledge of seasonal patterns and safe zones, combined with Wu Jin's engineering skills, had made exploration and expansion much safer. It's not just survival anymore, Dr. Song observed. It's the foundation of a new kind of civilization. The first permanent research station was established in month 4. Unlike previous attempts to colonize hostile worlds, this one used what scientists were calling Wu Jin's method, or human adaptive methodology. Instead of trying to impose Earth-normal conditions on the planet, the new colonists learned to adapt their technology and lifestyle to work with local conditions. They built with local materials, powered their equipment with local energy sources, and developed symbiotic relationships with native species. Ambassador Kira of the Zenthari Empire visited the growing settlement and was amazed by what she saw. Your buildings move with the wind instead of resisting it, she observed to Wu Jin as they walked through what was now being called New Haven Colony. The Nuru taught me that, Wu Jin replied. Fighting the environment wastes energy. Working with it makes everything easier. The colony's architecture was unlike anything in the galaxy. Buildings were designed to flex during storms, collect rainwater during weather events, and channel wind for cooling and power generation. Gardens were integrated into every structure, providing food, air purification, and chemical feedstock for manufacturing. Most remarkably, the technology worked better than traditional approaches. Power systems were more reliable because they drew from multiple local sources. Water supplies were more secure because they used natural collection and purification methods. Food production was more sustainable because it incorporated local ecology. Captain Reth of the Hegemony Fleet brought a team of military engineers to study the colony's defensive capabilities. What he found impressed him even more than the civilian infrastructure. You've made this place into a fortress without building any weapons, he told Wu Jin. Why would I need weapons? Wu Jin asked. The planet itself protects us, it was true. The colony's location and design made it nearly impossible to attack successfully. Approaching ships had to navigate treacherous weather patterns that the colonists could predict and exploit. The settlement itself was distributed through natural cave systems and reinforced canyons that provided protection from orbital bombardment. Any attacking force would have to land and fight on foot in one of the galaxy's most hostile environments, while defenders who had spent months learning to use that environment to their advantage. It's brilliant, Captain Reth admitted. You've turned the planet's deadliness into your greatest defense. By month 6, the colony had grown to over 200 residents representing 15 different species. Each group brought their own expertise and perspective, but all had to learn the fundamental principle that had made Wu Jin's survival possible: adaptation over domination. The Vorlak contributed their understanding of biochemistry, helping develop new medicines from local plants. The Constructor Guild engineers learned to build structures that lasted longer by working with natural forces instead of against them. Even the proud Zenthari found that their energy manipulation techniques worked better when integrated with the planet's electrical systems. We're not just learning to survive here, reported Engineer Zilvan to his superiors. We're learning new ways of thinking about technology itself. The colony's success sparked a revolution in galactic colonization policy. Worlds that had been written off as uninhabitable were suddenly being reconsidered. The Galactic Council established a new department, specifically to study adaptive colonization techniques. Dr. Naya of the Vorlak Research Institute became the department's first director. The human showed us something we had forgotten, she said in her inaugural address. Intelligence isn't just about building more advanced technology. It's about knowing when and how to use the right technology for each situation. Universities across the galaxy began offering courses in primitive technology integration and environmental partnership protocols. Young engineers studied Wu Jin's improvised devices alongside the most advanced starship. Designs the Nuru, meanwhile, had become galactic celebrities in their own right. Their deep understanding of Kepler 442c's ecology and their cooperative approach to problem-solving made them valuable consultants for other Deathworld colonization projects. Nuru, the individual who had first approached Wu Jin, now served as the colony's liaison with visiting research teams. Through translation devices, Nuru could explain concepts that had taken the galaxy centuries to develop. Sky people always try to make planet-like old home, Nuru explained to a group of hegemony terraforming specialists. Better to make sky people like new home. Planet has wisdom. Learn from planet. As the colony's first anniversary approached, Wu Jin found himself in an unexpected position. The crash victim who had just wanted to survive had become the founder of a new approach to space colonization. Do you ever regret staying? Dr. Song asked him during one of their regular interviews. Wu Jin looked out over the thriving settlement. Gardens flourished between buildings that seemed to grow naturally from the rock. Children from a dozen species played together in the protected courtyards. Scientists and engineers worked alongside Nuru craftspeople, sharing knowledge that benefited everyone. This is home now, he said. Not just for me, but for everyone here. We've built something new together. The original crash site had been preserved as a monument, but it was no longer the center of the settlement. New Haven Colony had grown far beyond its humble beginnings, sprawling through the canyon systems and high valleys that provided natural protection. Transport ships arrived daily now, bringing new colonists, supplies, and visitors, but they also carried something more valuable: the news that similar colonies were being established on other death worlds throughout the galaxy. The age of impossible planets was ending. In its place came the age of adaptation, cooperation, and the understanding that life could flourish anywhere if it was willing to learn from its environment instead of trying to conquer it. On a clear day, when the acid storms had passed and the air was as clean as it ever got on Kepler 442c, Wu Jin would stand on the observatory platform he had built on the highest point of the colony. From there, he could see the lights of New Haven stretching through the valleys, the gardens that fed hundreds of people, and the workshops where beings from across the galaxy worked together to solve problems no single species could handle alone. It wasn't the life he had planned when he first became a cargo pilot, but it was exactly the life the galaxy needed him to build. The human who had refused to die on a death world had instead shown everyone how to truly live. 1 year after the crash, Li Wu Jin stood in the main hall of New Haven Colony's Education Center, watching something that would have seemed impossible just months before. Students from 12 different species sat together, learning what was now called adaptive survival engineering. The instructor was Kim Dae-ho, a human engineer who had arrived 3 months earlier specifically to help develop the curriculum. But half the lessons were taught by Nuru elders who shared knowledge that had kept their people alive on Kepler 442c for millennia. Today, we learn about storm energy. Collection, announced Elder Sirixin carefully. Practice galactic standard. The small furry creature gestured toward a complex diagram showing Wu Jin's original lightning collection system, alongside improved versions developed by the colony's research teams. In the front row, a young Xanthari engineer took careful notes alongside a Vorlak biochemist and 2 human graduate students. They asked questions about power storage, safety protocols, and material sciences with equal curiosity and respect. "This is what I'm most proud of," Wu Jin told Dr. Song Jihai as they observed the class together. "Not the survival, not the colony, but this. Everyone learning from everyone else." The education center was just one of many innovations that had emerged from the colony's success. The New Haven model, as it was now known throughout the galaxy, emphasized cooperation over competition, adaptation over domination, and practical solutions over theoretical perfection. Companies from every major civilization sent teams to study the colony's methods. The Hegemony Defense Corps wanted to understand how the settlement's distributed architecture provided security without weapons. The Xanthari Trade Federation was fascinated by the colony's resource efficiency and waste recycling systems. Even the isolated Crystalline Consortium had sent observers to learn about human-Nuru cooperation methods. But the most significant visitor arrived on a cold morning near the colony's first anniversary. Fleet Admiral Park Sang-woo of the Human Colonial Authority stepped off a transport ship and looked around the thriving settlement with obvious amazement. "Pilot Li Wu Jin," he said formally, "on behalf of humanity and the Colonial Authority, I'm here to offer you the position of Director of Hostile World Colonization. We want you to lead the establishment of similar colonies throughout human space." Wu Jin considered the offer carefully. It would mean leaving Kepler 442c, traveling to other Deathworlds, and repeating his survival experience dozens of times. It would mean fame, authority, and the chance to shape humanity's expansion into the galaxy. "Thank you for the honor, Admiral," Wu Jin replied, "but I have to decline." Admiral Park looked surprised. "May I ask why?" "Because this isn't about human colonies anymore." Wu Jin gestured toward the mixed groups of beings working throughout the settlement. "What we've built here is something new. It's not human or Nuru or Xanthari. It's all of us together." "I don't understand." Wu Jin led the Admiral on a tour of the colony. They visited the workshops where human engineers worked alongside Constructor Guild architects to design buildings that could withstand conditions on any hostile world. They saw the laboratories where Vorlak scientists collaborated with Nuru herbalists to develop medicines that worked for multiple species. In the agricultural districts, they watched as farming techniques from Earth were combined with Xanthari hydroponics and Nuru soil chemistry to create food production systems that were more efficient than anything any single species had developed alone. "Do you see?" Wu Jin asked as they stood in the main plaza, where beings from across the galaxy lived and worked together peacefully. "This isn't about one species conquering hostile worlds. It's about all of us learning to live with the universe as it is, not as we wish it were." Admiral Park was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded. "Perhaps you're right. But the Colonial Authority still needs your expertise. What would you suggest?" "Send students," Wu Jin replied. "Send engineers, scientists, and diplomats to learn from what we've built here. Then let them go back and teach others. Don't try to copy this place exactly, but spread the ideas." Over the following months, that's exactly what happened. The New Haven colony became the galaxy's first true interspecies university. Students came to learn not just technical skills, but new ways of thinking about cooperation and adaptation. The Galactic Council established the New Haven Protocols, a set of guidelines for ethical colonization that emphasized partnership with existing ecosystems and native populations. Worlds that had been considered impossible to settle were successfully colonized using techniques developed on Kepler 442c. Commander Veltar, who had led the original rescue mission, returned to establish the Galactic Emergency Response Training Center. Emergency responders from every major civilization learned to work with primitive tools and local resources, preparing them for situations where advanced technology might fail. The human taught us that technology is just one tool among many. Veltar explained to his first class of mixed species rescue specialists. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one. Ambassador Kira of the Zenthari Empire became one of the colony's strongest supporters, helping to negotiate agreements that allowed New Haven's methods to be shared freely throughout the galaxy. She often said that Wu Jin had accomplished more for galactic peace in 1 year than most diplomats achieved in their entire careers. He showed us that different doesn't mean inferior, she said in a speech to the Galactic Assembly. Every species, every world, every way of life has something valuable to contribute. We just have to be wise enough to listen and learn. The Nuru people, meanwhile, had become respected voices in galactic affairs. Their perspective on long-term thinking and environmental partnership influenced policy decisions throughout civilized space. Elder Syrinx was appointed as the first Nuru representative to the Galactic Council, a position that would have been unimaginable before first contact. As New Haven Colony's second year began, Wu Jin found himself in a role he had never expected: elder statesman and teacher. Young beings from across the galaxy came to hear him speak about adaptation, survival, and the importance of working with what you have instead of waiting for what you want. People ask me what the secret is, he said during one such lecture. How did one human survive on a Deathworld and turn it into a thriving colony? The answer is simple: I didn't do it alone. He gestured to the audience, which included species that had been enemies for centuries, but now worked together on dozens of worlds. Every breakthrough came from combining different perspectives. Human ingenuity, Nuru wisdom, alien technology. None of us could have done this separately, but together we can do anything. The lecture hall erupted in applause from beings who communicated approval in dozens of different ways. Chittering, humming, light displays, and traditional clapping all mingled together in a sound that represented the new galaxy Wu Jin had helped create. Later that evening, as he often did, Wu Jin walked to the memorial site where his original shelter had stood. The crude buildings were gone now, replaced by a simple monument, but the meaning remained clear. A plaque in multiple languages told the story of the crash that had changed everything. But Wu Jin's favorite part was the inscription at the bottom suggested by Elder Syrinx. Here one lost person found home. Here many different peoples found each other. Here the galaxy learned that survival is not about being strongest, but about being wisest. As night fell over New Haven Colony, lights came on in hundreds of buildings. In workshops and laboratories, schools and homes, beings from across the galaxy continued the work of building something new together. The human who had refused to die on a Deathworld had become something even more important: the person who had shown the galaxy how to live. And in the distance, new transport ships appeared in the sky, bringing more students, more teachers, and more dreamers ready to learn that no world was truly impossible if you approached it with the right attitude and the willingness to work together. Wu Jin smiled and headed home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, and new opportunities to prove that cooperation was always stronger than conquest. The galaxy was learning, and there was still so much more to teach.